All right, are we ready?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November 6th meeting of the Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee. Please call the roll.
Mr. Angeli, Mr. Grabsky,
Here.
Mr. Labrie,
Here.
Mr. Lamberts, Mr. Marshall,
Here.
Mr. Partington,
Yeah.
Ms. Resco. Here. Mr. Stressler,
Here.
Mr. Walters,
Here.
Mr. Zeltman,
Here.
and Chair Mamana.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay, can I get an approval of the agenda for today's meeting?
Move to approve, Madam Chair. Second.
Seconded, approved and seconded, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Can I get,
Marilyn.
yeah, wait. Since I'm making a big deal out of it.
You want to wait till you finish your dessert?
Mhm. I have a speech ready. Right. Approval of previous meeting minutes. Everybody's had an opportunity to take a look at them.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Everybody, oh, wait a minute, we have comments, yes?
Discussion, Marilyn.
Yes, we do. We're having discussion right now, Fred.
I just wanted to, it's not critical, but on page 6,
Yeah,
the second full paragraph. This road commented.
yes.
City manager mentioned about where the development service department was. It said located on, this is where it said 19th Avenue. Can we just clarify that that is northwest?
Sure. Northwest 19th Avenue. Done. For the record, Mr. Lambeck has joined the meeting. Okay, any other comments on the minutes? Yeah, oh, okay,
Do routes first.
okay.
Yeah, I noticed that the, on page. Not page 2, let's start with the page 2, and work forward.
Page 2.
And it says we're, in the, under motion. The second sentence says Mr. Zeldin stated that his attendance would reflect 9 meetings, and actually. It should have reflected, I think back then it was 7 meetings. It's gonna be. If I got, bullied at the table, everybody wanted to know how come I got 2 extra. Meetings.
Mhm.
So that should be 7 meetings, and then the next sentence below that is correct. Going back to the front page.
Right,
and
they
still,
did correctly.
we still have problems.
We
with
still
that,
have problems, okay.
with the attendance of that, and I can only speak for myself, because I don't. Not privileged to the others, but I should have I guess 8 attendance and 0 absence.
8 attendance and 0 absences.
And then there's some others that
All
are.
right, let me ask a question of the staff. When we calculate these absences and attendance and absence, is it from a fixed date for everybody, or is it from the date at which they were appointed? Because that may be a problem.
I would have to find out. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so
It is based on the board year unless a member comes in the middle of a board year. Obviously, they have fewer attendances than someone else.
a board year
But it
starts in
restarts.
January 1?
It should say on the minutes, the cumulative from, every board is different. First page of the minutes where the attendance is. Oh, she doesn't have the date. On mine, I have the date, from such and such a date and such a date. So I can't say when your board year starts. Looking at these, but that's when it starts. That's when it resets.
Can you get that?
Okay, clearly we have an
I'll
issue
ask
here.
her.
Yeah.
And the issue has not been resolved as I hoped it would have been in the subsequent meeting. So we will make this on the agenda for the next meeting. We will discuss clearing this whole thing up as an item rather than take up any more time. I'm gonna find out from staff, absolutely. Okay, so, Mr. Sessau, you wanted to make a comment on the minute?
Mine has to do with the vote. And I have been arguing with Dwayne over the fact that I wasn't even on the committee when you guys did these minutes, nor was I in the room. And I said, the state statute requires me to vote to approve minutes that I wasn't even in the room on or on the board.
So don't vote.
No, I have to vote. So,
In other words, if you're here at this meeting.
Yeah.
And you weren't here at the meeting when at the meeting of which the minutes are,
right,
what are your options? Vote, not vote,
Vote no.
abstain? Vote no.
You can't
No,
abstain.
vote yes.
So vote no.
see, I watch what's going on in Congress, and some of the congressmen vote president.
President, that's what you vote.
And Dwayne says, no, it's gotta be one way or the other. I said, okay, that's
If that's the way you want it,
just so Jamie knows when we get around to it.
okay, good enough. Well, since now you've spoken, perhaps I should introduce you to the
Oh.
membership.
You're
I
gonna
don't know.
introduce me?
I am definitely gonna do.
Oh, okay, then I won't have to say it.
Okay, let's vote on the minutes.
Yes.
Oh, I got my speech. All right, let's vote on the minutes. Irrespective of the issue on present or not present or voting, do I have any other comments on the minutes? Hearing
Madam
none,
Chair?
yes,
I move that we accept the change it to the minutes and move that it be accepted
Second.
with change.
with the changes. Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, all right. I would like to take this moment, this opportunity to introduce everybody to Fred Stressauer, who is the newest member of our group. Fred was the original member of this group when we started low those many years ago. And you know, you've been doing this a long time when we start recycling people into the mix. So, welcome, Fred,
Thank you.
and, welcome. We've got lots of work to do. And for the record, the Gerald Angeli has joined the meeting as well. All right, so let's start with the first item on the agenda, which is the old business city hall replacements. And this is like a big item for us, so let's start with that. Who's going to take that?
We'll be talking, well, we have a presentation lined up and I have a few handouts, but so that you guys can follow.
And
along.
Louise, who?
We is Erica Johnson with the Office of Management and Budget, Cheryl Dickey with Dickey Consulting, you remember her from last meeting.
Yep.
And then actually we started our strategic meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're handing out handouts. Reimagining city hall handouts.
So as you all can recall, So if you look at the meeting objectives, on our next slide. Obviously, for our workshop, we will be holding that workshop as the introduction as we had discussed before. And we found a location. We'll be working with the FAU Metro Lab at 111 Los Angeles.
Right.
And so we'll be sending all that information out. It'll be on the web. And, you know, we're looking forward to it. We've met with the students and the 3 professors, and we'll proceed with the workshop as we had discussed before, with an introduction that really talks about the history of Fort Lauderdale City Hall being built, what they envisioned, who they consulted with at that time, and then what they decided to do in terms of what housing these city halls, and then how they, of course, built onto the ones that were built, and then the selling of the one. I'm not, we're going to do all this at the workshop. I just want to kind of give you, we're going through that history that we provided to you all at firm. And then after that, what we're going to do is then give them some opportunities. You're going to see the 5 questions that we're going to ask them, including, that's going to be on the next slides, including the actual demographic information of what zip code they're from, and as well as age, just so we're making sure we're covering all aspects, all generations in residents in the city of Fort Lauderdale, as well as covering the zip code, making sure we're touching all bases. So that's what's going to be on the survey that will be put up, that of course Eric will discuss further, as well as what we will actually provide in the workshop itself. And after that, then we also are going to deal with looking at the AIA folks giving a little presentation of presidents in city halls, you know, around the nation and world, And then they will present those, some of those as well as others, what they actually consist of and why they are deemed to be world class. And then we will actually have an exercise that we will take the folks through. They'll break up and pick the first, second, and third choices of what they like best about these world class. And that'll be the exercise we'll have at the first
Can
session.
we stop there a minute?
Yes.
Everybody understand what we're doing here? They're the students and their professors are gonna make a presentation of world-class city halls,
Yes.
maybe 3 or 4, whatever, no more than 3, please. And then we're gonna have a breakout session. and
Yeah,
people
so
are
that
gonna
they can
say what
choose
they
first,
like
second,
about
and third, yes. Just to give some idea what the public believes to be their first choice and their second choice, and have a little discussion of why.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, okay.
Not on that, are we going to let Cheryl do her whole presentation? Doesn't seem there's much more of it.
Well, I listen. Whatever is your all pleasure, but this struck me as being a very, very major kind of a thing. And I'd like to get some feedback from my fellow.
We can go back to it, Ms. Marilyn, we can go back to it. If Erica can then explain her part, and then we'll just go back to the slide.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I'm done. Erica.
Okay, next slide, please. So just kind of wanted to outline for you, really want to make sure that you're comfortable as we move forward with the facilitation workshop that's coming up. And this is really our last chance to do that. So I wanted to make sure that we were outlining who all was a part of this facilitation team with you. I know there's a lot of moving parts, so I want to make sure that you're comfortable. So obviously there is you all as the infrastructure task force. We're looking for you, for guidance on what we include in these workshops and the survey questions. We also have Dickey Consulting, which Cheryl was just up here. The American Institute of Architects. This is the student chapter out at FAU that Cheryl was referencing when she was talking about students. So they're not going to have as much of a active role as some of these other members, but they're really here to, provide some insight and some guidance, and it's also an educational opportunity for them. And then obviously the city is very involved, specifically the Office of Management and Budget, which I'm a part of. So just kind of wanted to outline those different players and roles for you, so that was really understood at the onset. Do you mind going to the next slide? So I know we talked about this verbally at the last meeting, but I wanted to give it to you on the handout and have it printed here just as a reminder. These are the dates that we've selected and the topics for the 5 workshops. These are all Saturday mornings. They'll be held 9 a.m. to 11. We do have rooms confirmed for all of these, with the first one happening the week after Thanksgiving at the FAU Metro Lab. So, just wanted to have that clarified here in case someone didn't get it jotted down. At least you can take something home today when all those are going to be happening. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit more about that agenda, I think, that you wanted to dig into a little bit. So it's, just 5 points that we're covering. We'll have a welcome and introduction. Marilyn, I think this would be a really great opportunity if you're planning on being at this workshop to kind of introduce the group and the effort, along with Cheryl, as chair of the board of this committee. And then, Cheryl's team will go through the history of Fort Lauderdale City Halls, again, referencing that material that you got last month at the meeting. We will be having our survey posted. I'll be talking about that a little bit more in just a moment. But we have the baseline data and survey results that we'll share with you today, and then the survey that will be taking place will have all of that information presented to the attendees. So we'll have some data included. And then the American Institute of Architects will be sharing that information on those world-class city halls. We can really understand the elements of city halls that the neighbors are interested in bringing and mimicking here in Fort Lauderdale. And then we'll close out. So if you have any thoughts or concerns, please take the time now. We'd love to get your feedback.
Yes, Peter.
My question is, at the first workshop, what is the handout that you're going to distribute? Is it what was with our agenda, or?
This is just for you today, so you walk out with a clear understanding of what the plan is moving forward. I'll defer to Cheryl.
Yeah, so that was just for today. What they'll have is the survey questions, which are next on the slide, I believe. I know you have to go through your section. Yeah, a few more slides. You'll see it in your handout. So we're going to engage them. They're going to answer the questions on the survey, and then we'll have a short little discussion about, why they, what are some of the ideas that they came up with. on the survey, and then additional thought processes. And then what we were gonna do is have them select what they liked about. We're referring to it as world-class, but we're also saying city halls that will be presented to them with their various amenities and spacing. And then they will select which ones they believe are their first, second, and third choice. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, let's go with, did that answer your question or we move
Well,
on?
on the survey, I have a comment.
Well, we haven't seen the survey. yet.
It's on the next one.
Oh, we have. I haven't-
It's not in your handout.
It's in your handout, but we're gonna go through it a little bit more specifically. I have a web link that shows exactly what the neighbors will see, but we can skip ahead if you'd like.
So,
Okay, yes, that's a comment, it's here, let's go.
So I'm wondering if you should ask a question about whether people interact with City Hall digitally by email, website, or the app. What was the
Okay.
thinking on that?
Okay.
You know,
All
if
right.
you don't come to City Hall, you may still be using the website to pay bills.
Okay. Mhm.
I use Builder Link. And
Okay.
something else. Yeah.
Okay,
Information, who's your?
My goodness, oh, well, we have, I received it, thank you for bringing it, we have our Commissioner, John Herbst here today, welcome Commissioner Herbst.
Thank you. So I, as some of you may know, have a strong interest in this particular issue. So one of the things I'd like on your questions of why do you go to City Hall, you have meet with city staff, that's very good, but it's not granular. Because the thing that I've been articulating is I don't think everybody needs to be downtown. And so it depends on what city staff you're meeting with. Some need to be downtown, some are admin folks that don't need to be downtown. I want to know who they're meeting with
You
too.
want to drop down, you
Yes.
want to give them
Yeah.
suggestions that they can
Yes.
respond to.
Right, good. I always tell people, nobody's going to meet accounts payable. So I want to, quantify who's being, who needs to be downtown.
Okay.
Yeah, we absolutely had plans to do that on a future survey, but I think it might make sense to put it on this.
I'd like to see it early. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go with Lucia.
I just have I think on after all your meetings, the last thing on there should be a brief outline of what the next meeting is about. I think that kind of points all of us in the right direction. Where you got next step. We need to say what those steps.
What the next meeting is, yes,
Yeah.
because they'll be handed an agenda.
Yeah.
at the meeting, yes, okay.
Okay, and any more comments? Yes, James.
Yeah, similarly to the question about who you're talking to, I think the question, survey question about demographics is granular enough to either. We're planning on expanding on that.
We can, that's why we did sort of et cetera, because we didn't do it there.
Your agent zip code is pretty broad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Zip codes cross districts.
In neighborhoods, is that?
Yeah,
what you're
that
saying?
could be my
I think-
comment, yeah.
What neighborhood you live in,
Okay.
would be a more specific
Definitely what
question
Mhm.
than zip code.
You would actually be
Resident
surprised how
neighborhood
many people don't know. What district do you live in? What's the
Yeah.
community?
The district and neighborhood.
And
Well,
neighborhood.
You want it from the district and neighborhood?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's amazing.
Why would
think
you
most
also
people
ask
know that.
if they were permanent residents or they were a visitor? Temporary renter?
That's an interesting
Homeowner or
question.
renter?
Or,
Yeah, because I don't hear from the people that live here.
Property owner or resident?
Yeah.
You want to know renters versus property owners? Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
no. I
If they're
don't think so.
temporary, you know,
Now, that's a different question, though. You can be a renter and not be temporary.
Yeah, that's true.
So then you have to actually ask that question.
So I think
Are
we're
you-
just meaning, are you a permanent resident? Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
this is
Yeah.
very enthusiastic, so we're gonna have to have a little. Fred asked that question. I have a comment on his question. I think perhaps what you're trying to get at, correct me if I'm wrong, is are you seasonal? Do you come, are you a snowbird or are you here all the time? That might make it.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's important to people, but I certainly don't want to make a distinction between a property owner and resident. That's. I live here, I rent, yeah, my opinion, yeah.
I think you'd be surprised how many people are gonna struggle knowing what district you're in.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, so I
I've
don't
seen
know
it.
how.
tell you that?
There's not one for one.
But yeah, obviously we need like an unknown part of that, but I
Now,
think
you know what we can do, there's the district map and we can have it up on the wall.
That would be great.
it would, yeah,
Okay?
That would be very helpful.
it would be helpful.
We did that when we did ours, yeah.
Tim's in there where they
Yes,
live.
Gotta have some detail on that map, because it's,
Yes, there is detail on that map. We just had to blow it up and put it on. the-
yeah.
So-
Thank you.
Is that map that's got the district and the neighborhood?
That's right.
Yes, it does have the
It does
neighborhood.
have the name.
Now, some neighborhoods are always identified.
If they don't know it, they don't know it. That's okay. It's no obligatory, you could even say optional or something like that, so people don't feel, oh God, I didn't know it. I
They
didn't
start
know that.
guessing, and then we get that
It's
data.
optional.
Yeah.
Optional. Yes, Ralph.
And you wanna distinguish between permanent resident versus a temporary.
Well, that was the question I
That's
just
the
finished
season.
That's
asking.
what happened in the Rio Vista Civic Association. We had a couple new people asked to be on the board. And they have never even lived in Rio Vista for more than a month or something like that. They're really gung ho, but they don't know the history behind the organization or the area. And it's been kind of awkward.
So I would imagine we might ask that is this your primary or secondary residence, because we've done other surveys and asked it in that language.
Okay. Primary or secondary residence, I like that. Mhm. Yeah, very good. Okay, so there may be other questions, I mean, as we continue, then we may have to come back to this to make sure, to just absorb it, yes.
So is our conclusion that each one of these will have a drop down with options to
I'm gonna show
select?
you what it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, if we could go back to these slides now. But if I just hold you in suspense for a few moments, I do want to give Ashley Bussard a moment to walk through our communications types. I think it provides a little bit of context for the website that I'm going to be showing you. Yeah, so the goal of the communications plan is to encourage as much participation and collaboration from residents as possible. So we are going to get the word out about the workshops. And part of that is going to be through several different areas. We've got a pretty detailed list here. The Engage page with the platform is called Engage, so that's why you keep seeing that word throughout the plan. And that's what Eric is going to show you. That enables us to give detailed information about the workshops, the times, and it will also allow us to ask feedback from residents. If they're not able to attend one of these workshops, they can still participate in the process and give us some of their feedback and answer questions on what they would like to see.
Would it be the same questions?
Yes. That was the plan.
Good, okay.
So to get the word out about this, we're gonna be using postcards. We're gonna direct mail so that everybody in the city gets access to these workshops. They'll have the dates, the times, the locations of the workshops, and the link and QR code. If you're not able to make it to the workshop, here's where you can participate and send your feedback. We're gonna have flyers at city buildings and high traffic areas, trying to get the word out. Obviously, we'll have it on the city website. We're gonna launch a social media campaign. We'll send press releases to the media to ask them to share the information and invite them to some of these workshops so that they can see the participation and what people are asking for. We're gonna leverage our community stakeholders, reaching out to the civic associations and all of our advisory boards and committees so that we can ask you all to help spread the word to get this out to everyone. We have partnerships with different organizations throughout the city, Riverwalk, the Chamber, the DDA. They're all great at helping us disseminate information when we need to. We also have a pretty large email distribution list. We'll send that out to tens of thousands of people to make sure that they're aware of the workshops. And again, if they're not able to participate in person, they can do it online. The mayor and commissioners send out their own newsletters. So we would ask that they include those in their newsletters, encouraging that too. We can also utilize the backside of the water bill to get people information so we can make sure that we reach people in a variety of digital and in hard copy.
Okay. That's very comprehensive. I can't think of anything else. That's pretty good. All right.
So now I'm going to show you, and if you don't mind switching the website, I'm going to show you what this page, this engaged page looks like. I have a link online. It's not live yet because we really wanted to get your feedback about it today. But this is what it'll look like. So this, you can get through here through the city website or the QR codes and postcards that Ashley mentioned. But we're calling this effort Reimagining City Hall. So over here, we have just an outline of the history of why are we doing this effort in case neighbors aren't familiar with, the impacts that the flood had on City Hall. As well as what our goal is, which is to establish the set of guiding principles. So trying to just build some context about what we're doing and why we're doing it. On the right, you'll see we have a project timeline, and I've already built in those project dates that we have and the topic that we'll be talking about. One really interesting thing that I love about this platform is as each workshop concludes, right here, you can see it has a green dot. It'll actually change color and the green dot will move down to denote that this activity's been completed. I'm going to be managing this page and making sure that it's up to date. I know there's nothing more frustrating than going and realizing something's out of date. So we'll be very cognizant of that. And if you scroll down just a little bit, we also have information, and this will be, ever changing every month. Attend the next workshop, why we're trying to pique their interest and why we want them to come and get their input, when it will be, and then where, both, the building and the specific location address. And then here's where they can actually take the workshop. We estimate it'll be 5 minutes, so we'll build in those edits that you talked about today, but if you want mine, you can participate now. So it'll just be a brief welcome page, again, kind of telling them how we're going to be using their input. It's a short survey. We don't want to have survey fatigue on something like this. Next. And here's where those questions are. So how often do you go to City Hall? This is the best answer. Why do you go to City Hall? You can select as many as you'd like. And if we don't have an option that fits what you're looking for, there is another category. What barriers do you have that prevents you from accessing services at City Hall? Again, click all that apply, or if there's something else. And then this is a free text short answer response. What services are important in a new city? If you hit next, this is where we'll have those demographic questions. So we'll beef this up a little bit based on your feedback today. And then when they hit next, they're done. So this will be ahead of time available. We'll also can have an opportunity for them to take the survey at the workshop, and the survey closes at the conclusion of the workshop.
Okay, could you go back 1 slide or 2 slides?
The presentation or just the
The
paper?
survey, the survey.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna make edits to that. One more. Back. Okay. Why do you go to, all the way to the bottom of that page? Okay. What services are important in a new city hall? Obviously, just a small edit there. What services do you think would be important in a new city hall? Okay, global question. It's your opinion.
Okay, that's easy enough.
All right, anybody else want other information? You think we need additional information? But what is the purpose of this information? The purpose of this information is to find out what people want in a city hall. And what they want and what we can give them may be 2 different things.
That's true.
But we should know what they want.
And as we go through the different topics, these survey questions will kind of drill down a little bit more specific on the topics that we're at, but this is very introductory.
Right, and I'm assuming that after we've done at least the first workshop, we can even beef this up based upon the
We can
feedback.
change
get
it,
on the
we can
ground.
edit it, we can do whatever we need to do.
James?
On the question about why you go to City Hall. I think there's a lot of people who go to City Hall when we have our Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Association. So I don't know if community meeting.
Community meetings should be up there as one of the choices.
Check off boxes.
Community meeting, and then under I heard a drop down for meet with city staff. Who is that? So how many drop downs are we really talking about here from meet with city staff, Commissioner?
On the distinguishing between what city staff do you go to City Hall to meet? What would your general thinking be? How do you want it split up?
Maybe just by department, so if you're there to see finance, you're there to see engineering, public work, whatever.
That would be fairest way to do it by default.
Yeah.
Okay. Rocking and rolling, yeah. Yes, Peter.
So I'm not understanding, will this survey be available online, but then closed on the day of, or at the end of the day that this meeting is held?
Yeah, so as soon as we can have this posted this week, and then the survey will run up until the workshop, and we can designate the time that the survey turns off.
And
So
there'll be a link to that on the city's website.
yeah, this whole platform will be available online for people to learn more about the project.
So I have a question. So is there a thought process that it should be up longer than, the day of the workshop, half a week?
Has to,
Well, that brings up, when should we start? I mean, do we
But
start after
we're talking-
December? Sixth or before December? Do you want to start now?
We could start this week if you'd like. We could have this up and running this week.
What do you guys think?
Why not?
I mean, the only people who are gonna see it are people who are looking for it. Unless you get the word out that it's there.
And that's,
Yeah, that's part of the communications
What
plan.
do you think?
We can have something ready to go by the end of the week, I'm sure. If you wanna have that done.
Right, but then how would you let people know that it's there and available?
Well, that's part of the communications plan. I mean, we'll do all of the things on this list. The only thing that we wouldn't be able to do this week is probably the postcard. But the postcard, won't be far behind.
Okay, so you're saying we can actually start this process in a week. We don't have to wait to the first workshop.
Correct, yeah, we
You
can
guys are
start it
ready to rock.
as soon as possible.
Okay. James,
Is there a mechanism that manages how often one person responds to a survey?
Yeah, so there's an algorithm. We actually use this same vendor for all of our community surveys. And so they have mechanisms and algorithms in place that can help reduce that. I mean, obviously nothing is perfect, but we can do.
Brad, and then,
what's the real thinking between having a cutoff date? I mean, does it make any difference? Are we intending to total the answers on this survey before the next year?
well, let's ask the consultant that. What do you think?
I mean, I don't see any reason to stop it.
Time to, because we're gonna report.
We need it for the next
You
meeting.
you have
We're
to,
gonna
you
report
have to
back
be
to you
Right,
the results, so they will need time. And
Yeah.
So the thing-
vendor to basically assemble the information.
Yeah, and so the thinking was that we would have the survey turn off at the conclusion of the first workshop. That way we could collect all of the input from those that are attending in person. The results are fairly easy to get out, so we would then compile those and share those at the next infrastructure task force meeting with you as we plan for the subsequent.
but then were you thinking that after the workshop is over and we collected all the data, the site goes back up again with the survey, so then in the interim between the first workshop and the next workshop, it's available. for
Yeah,
people
like,
to
like
participate.
until 2 weeks before or something.
I think you modify the
Yeah,
survey
if I
based on the last
January
result.
8th is the
Well,
next-
if there's major changes. that would be
January 8th is
good,
the
but we
next
don't-
meeting,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, if I may just chime in, there are gonna be different questions for each workshop.
Right,
So the site would go up, but it would go up with different questions relating to the next topic. So it's gonna be a cadence of reporting back from the last meeting, reporting back from the last survey, firing up the new questions, and planning for the next.
but can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
These are general questions we want to know everybody's opinion on.
Yeah.
So maybe what you need to do is you need to have this one up all the time,
Okay.
okay? And then the workshop specific ones are in the
Short,
time for the
short.
workshop,
We could do that.
okay? Commissioner?
Yeah, that's good input. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we can do that.
Cool,
I was going down the same line, because I think,
that's great.
I don't think the survey should be closed until all the workshops have been. So that you will get the full estimation of what everybody thinks. If you share it after the first workshop, then you will miss all the people who didn't know.
About the first workshop, yeah, James.
But the surveys that say we start running next week or this week, that one stays up for 5 months, and then the next one, 3 months, and then 2, I mean, it's not comparable between surveys.
Well,
There's
that's a
gonna be a
good
new
point.
survey each month, right? Or almost each month. So you're giving more credence to this very first one. And then way more value than to the other ones, and we have no idea what's gonna be in the other surveys. I think we should set a time limit on it. It doesn't have to be closed the week that we do it, but it has to close, I think it's.
But you know, okay, but I want to go back to what you just said about the individual surveys. I mean, if the second workshop survey is site specific, okay, and people are only taking that survey at that particular time, then the people who have been participating all along might not participate. Maybe they should all just be open.
Yeah, well, if I may just clarify what our original plan was, and then I'm hearing a couple of different things. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the original plan was this survey, which we can keep up to whatever time period, would go live this week and then close at the conclusion of the second workshop.
Right.
That following week, we would come back to you with a plan for workshop 2 with a new set of survey questions. At which time those would go live and then close at the conclusion of the second workshop. So we would only ever have one survey live at a time. But the idea was that every survey would be open to either virtual engagement and or in-person attendance. So we can modify that, but that was the original idea around it. The one caution I might have is if you have more than one survey on this Engage portal, we can do that. But it might be a little bit confusing to the neighbors which one they should be taking. But we're happy to do. At the push.
So what was the rationale behind? Only, was it just to have one going at the same, at one time, or was there more rationale besides deciding why you wanted to have only one?
Only one survey?
Yeah,
We would have 5 surveys with you.
I didn't know, but what?
Available.
Oh, okay,
Available.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's a good question. So part of what we're doing at the beginning of each workshop is to sharing out data. So this could be some of the data that informs the discussion at the next workshop.
Right,
So we're hoping that at the conclusion of workshop 1, we'll have some information that we'll prepare. We'll say, hey, here's where city facilities are. Here's where people participating are. Here's what the initial feedback is. Everyone wants to do these things. And they would inform the discussion along the way. So that was, so the report from the first workshop would take into account the feedback that Cheryl collects from folks when they have the facilitated sessions. Plus the survey questions, then we'll report back to you and then design that next workshop.
right, I mean, and that makes sense because of, you know, Commissioner Herbst was saying. If you go down to the city hall, nobody's talking to accounts payable, then you have to question, does accounts payable belong in city hall?
So it would inform future discussions if you had that survey closed and the results back, it could result in a more informed conversation in workshop 2, workshop 3.
Help me. If this survey, a surveyor, is for the benefit of this committee only?
The committee, because you're driving this, but obviously, you know, your commissioners and other people on-
Exactly.
That's what.
And guys. I mean, this first survey is so general. It would apply to any and all of the districts. I mean, if you said to District 1 or District 4, District 3, why do you go to City Hall? What difference does it make?
So because this is so general, this one could stay up. I think we could sort of say, feel that makes sense. But the other ones are gonna be specific. We want to know about the spacing, we want to know about amenities, and then the whole issue about finance and procurement. So
And on that one, in order to distinguish it from this one, you can put survey for District 1, a survey for the residents of District 2, you know.
no, it'll be for everyone each time. Each time it's for everyone. What we can say is this is general information. And then we can be more specific about, this is for amenities, this is for spacing, ideas, and tell them what it's about and they can respond.
There's no, each one of the workshops after the first workshop is being held in a district.
Yes.
Okay, so district, workshop number 2 is district, whatever the order is.
Right.
And
But the survey is not only gonna be at the district meeting, but it's up on the web.
yeah, because it's only the physical location of it. It's not specific
For that district.
for that district.
That's right.
If that's what you're asking, and I think it is.
And just trying to get around to everybody.
It's very.
Well, do you think it will make a big deal of difference, and should we be focusing on that? I mean, I think you're right. I think there's, between the districts, there's a real different sense of why you would go to City Hall. I mean, I talked to a couple of people the other night and at a function, I said, do you ever go to City Hall? I say, no, never, we never go to, why should we go to City Hall?
But remember, that's why you all have broadened our questionnaire, that then we will know where they're from.
Yeah, but
Because-
yes, we will know that that person who gave me that answer lives in Rio Vista and he has no
Right.
reason to go. I mean, everything's hunky dory,
But
but
they'll say that, they'll say that. And then on the website as well, we'll have that same map. So that if they're confused about zip code or the district they live in, they'll be able to see that because it'll be on the website.
okay, we have to explore this question a little further as to whether or not we need to get neighborhood specific on this, and but let's keep going.
Wait,
No, go on.
before you keep going, my concern is if all the surveys goes to all the people every time, by the time I get to survey number 2 and I see survey number 3, was I answering it? Bull, I done did 2 of them already.
Well, that's why we're engaging, and we're gonna say this to the public. We're asking for your commitment for 5 months to look at each month a survey,
Everything.
and that's why they're not long.
Everything.
Yes, we want you to tell, and don't you all want them to tell you? And you want them to know that they have the opportunity to say something about this city hall. And each one of these are specific to things that need to be known by you, the commissioners and others in order to plan for the city hall. Okay.
And I do want to reiterate that each of the topics of the surveys, of the workshops will be advertised. So they will know on January 13th, we're going to be talking about spacing. So when we push this out, and we will push this out multiple times throughout the next 5 months, they will know this survey has to do with spacing. And if they don't care about spacing, they won't take that survey, but they have the opportunity to if they want to give input.
I got a lot of problems.
All right, well, mull on it, we've got time.
Yes.
Peter?
So the first workshop is December the 2nd, and then ITF meets again on December the 4th. So why don't we leave the survey up until at least December the 4th, and then revisit this question in the light of the summation of the responses that we've received today.
Okay,
So,
But you talking-
yeah,
no, I think they need time, they need
Well,
time
we
to
can't-
get together.
we can't close the survey and report, you can't report back results until you close the survey, that's what the vendor did.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's like, we have to close it and then we can report back. So that's a decision to make. We're good with whatever you decide, but you can't report back until you. close it.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, Mark, you had some questions? You wanna chime
No, they were already answered actually,
in? Okay, very good.
but maybe on the
So have we reached a consensus? No, we're still
I'm
confused.
confused.
Keep going,
So
Peter.
what I'm hearing
Keep
is,
going.
we won't know the results of this survey until it is closed.
Right.
And then how long do you need after that to put together a report on the results?
A few days, so I think we could at the very least have a preliminary set of results for you that on December 4th.
So if they close the survey on the day of the workshop, the earliest we're going to find out the results is going to be the first meeting in January.
No, but you're right, it's
They will
first
hustle
meeting
and get it
December
done.
4th.
Can you do that? You close it on the 2nd, the Saturday, and then we have a meeting on the 4th, and you can tell us.
I'll verify with our
And
vendor.
I don't have to work during the weekend to compile all that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, seriously,
I know.
let's be fair here.
Let me just hold the question, please.
Cause we never had that in mind of doing it that quick,
No.
Peter. We did not.
And it's gonna get screwed up if you do it that quick. Let me propose a question.
Yes.
Move the board committee meeting to the second Monday rather than the first Monday.
Give them time.
That'll give them a few days. She said a few days, so now I'm giving her 6. But on the 7th, you have to have it ready.
Hang on, everybody, take a quick look at your calendars. We have to be a little flexible here too.
We got to be,
Okay.
but we gotta be fair. We gotta be
make
fair.
sure we have a room
to the
available
committee.
to change the dates.
Yeah, that's true too.
What's the matter?
We have to have the room available. Okay.
Your office.
You want all squeeze in there, you can try.
All right, let's go with December 11. That's not, I can do. You be going on vacation? December 11th? Let's do that then. Do we have to take a vote on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Can I get a motion from someone?
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I motion that we move the infrastructure task force meeting from December the 2nd to December, I'm sorry, from December the 4th to December the 11th at the same time and place.
Everybody second that? Peter,
I'll second it with a possible friendly amendment. Do you think it should add to that? And that we close the first survey at the end of the day,
No.
December the
no,
second?
no, let's keep this clean. We can do that.
That's
Let's
the
keep that
mechanics.
clean.
Second.
Okay, and seconded.
As-
All in
as-
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
So then the plan is to clarify, the plan is to close the survey at the conclusion of the second workshop, and then we'll have results ready for the ITF meeting.
I give you 8 days.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
All
All
you
right.
have to do is find a room. She's checking on it right now.
All right. So do you want Roosevelt to explore this question of, do we need neighborhood specific questions, or are we asking everybody the same question?
Everybody the same question.
I mean,
I
ecumenically speaking, that is the right way to
think
go.
that's the way to do it. Else you wanna have such a wide range to interpret what it all means when you have, that'll be 25, approximately 25 different questions
Mhm.
that you're trying to come up with a consensus of something. I think if we did all the workshops
Mhm.
with the same question, then it doesn't matter when you take that one down, because this next one got the same question.
Okey
And
doke,
hopefully, they would have already seen that one, and if they didn't take it, they give them a second chance, if they took it already, no problem.
okey dokey. All right.
That's just my opinion.
No, I think that's the sort of consensus we've just reached as well.
That this survey will remain up throughout the 5-month process.
This one.
And, but see, we gotta make sure that they don't take it twice. And
You know, this is not, they're not gonna get a prize for taking this, you know, this is a
I
burden, this is not a
I
prize.
understand it, but then the next 4 or the next 3 are really specific. They're specific to asking questions about space allocation, amenities, and then the
Finance.
3rd one is, procurement and financing, which is really a city scenario, because the last one is wrapping up and talking about all of the results of each one.
Okay, you good with that? I think so, I think we're good with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the people, what do they expect out of the city hall? And I guess in the equation, the size. Contingent upon what departments and others are in there.
And the answer
That's
is.
more of a addition. City.
There you go.
Question, because they may not.
So the group
People may not understand. How, which
Figured.
the organizations work together more closely.
So leave it like it is and move on.
That are out in solid.
Your turn.
Okay. Yes,
The roof's not built.
excuse me, just, yeah, this is critical, just a second, I'll be right with you. The room is not available.
It's not available, the 18th is not available, the 11th is not available as well. So.
Oh, so we can't do it. How about another room?
What is your office?
Station?
Marilyn, I thought we're gonna keep that introduction survey online,
All the time.
so it doesn't matter if we see the results or not, we may have some preliminary results on a board. And
No, she won't have any results on the board.
Okay.
They can't do the board. What are the odds of finding another venue?
No, it's up to you if you want to find another venue, but all along, we were prepared to give you the results on January 8th.
Okay, so unfortunately, the other option is to wait till the January 8th meeting. What are we gonna do on December 4th? Twiddle our thumbs? I mean, why are we doing? We have other things to do. We got plenty of other things to worry about. But, yeah,
Just one question, if you're gonna give us January 4th closing on, December 4th on January the 8th, when are you gonna give us the results for
The next workshop is January
the
3rd.
last workshop I'm talking about?
Yes, that's what we're gonna give you the results of on January 3rd. The
No, we-
December 2nd meeting,
Okay,
we were gonna give you the results of the December 2nd meeting on January the 8th your meeting on January the 8th. And then the next workshop is actually January the 13th.
Okay, and the one
Okay.
after that,
Does it work each time?
Yeah, that's exactly how we were doing it.
Oh,
We just had a little bit of extra
Yeah,
time.
yeah, and then we were gonna give the results of the January 13th meeting at your February 5th meeting.
all right.
And then our next workshop on amenities, because that other one was going to be on spaces. And then the February 17th meeting workshop on amenities, we were gonna give you that report on March 4th. And then the workshop on procurement and financing, which is March 16th, we were gonna give you the results of that on April 1st.
Oh,
that's okay.
April Fool's Day.
And I mean, because these are your meeting dates, right? And then the wrap-up workshop was April 20th, and we were gonna give you those results May 6th. We were just following.
the order. All right, so skip.
Just leave it like it is.
Skip the December, we're meeting on December 4th, regardless of that motion. Do we have to
Okay.
rescind it or anything?
Uh,
No, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you think so?
We should, right?
That we should rescind that motion?
Did we have a
Yeah.
motion?
Yeah, I guess we
We
voted on it.
got, we might have to.
All right, can I get a motion to rescind that motion?
Motion to rescind.
Motion to rescind from James, seconded by Shane. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're going back to December 2nd.
Or-
Oh, all right, now, continuing our discussion, James.
Speaking of December 4th, since that will be the first Monday right after the December 2nd workshop, I think it would be appropriate for us to debrief and then make decisions on the structure and how the future workshops should go based on our experience on the very.
Right, we may not have
We
the
can be
results of
here
the
just
survey, but we.
We don't
we-
have results of the survey for that.
Okay.
We'll just debrief.
Okay, I'm
and
sorry,
Make this.
Commissioner.
So just so I'm making sure that the information that's coming to the commission is consistent with what I think we're looking for.
Yes, please.
So when we're talking spacing, what does that mean from your perspective? Because I just had a question with Laura about what she thinks it means, and I want to see what you all think it means and what you think it means. So when you're talking spacing, so we've done 3 space analyses with HDR, which I've done with the city in 2007, starting in 2007. So I want to know if we're talking about how big the offices are going to be and how many offices relative to open space. Because if that's what you're talking about, my preference is not to have the community at large weigh in on how big Laura's office is.
Yes.
I don't think that's appropriate. We're really, really. But again, like I said, so I think that's important to understand is I don't think the community should be deciding how the city manager structures how people work, whether it's open space, whether it's offices, what that mix is. So that's just my concern. Having been on both sides, it's having planned my offices as the auditor to now looking at this, thinking about it from the manager's perspective. I don't know that that's a question that I think is relevant for the community to decide how we structure it.
Right.
Now, with a caveat to that, one of the things that I've said all along that I want you all to be considering, and I don't know how you want to best do this, is I want you to be mindful of work from home, remote work,
Yes,
hybrid
that's-
work schedules, telecommuting and all that sort of stuff. I want you to be thinking about that because again, as I've said over and over, we're planning how we're working for the next 50 years, right? So we need to be forward looking, not rearward. Again, I tell people, don't drive looking in the rearview mirror. So I want you to be mindful of how the workplace has changed in the last couple of years. Think about that going forward. But again, in terms of how big somebody's office needs to be, I don't know that that's.
That was never gonna be the question.
Yeah, right.
Never gonna be.
Right.
Right,
And
that's
really,
absolutely great.
to tell Commissioner, we're more interested in what the community thinks about a city hall.
Yeah.
And, whether it's, and their needs, and
Right.
if the survey results said, I need to be at city hall all the time for the following things,
Absolutely.
that's important.
That's why I just didn't understand what a space survey means. I just want to understand.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, well, when we get to the space issue in question, we need some input from the city. I mean, how big it is? Is it bigger than a bread box? How many people do we have? How many people do you anticipate?
Well, I think that goes, I think that goes back to, who do you see when you get to city hall?
Yeah, but we need some numbers from you all for people to bounce off of.
Right.
Because if people are saying, the only reason I ever go to City Hall is for a public meeting, okay? That's very important information, okay? So those are that's the way we go. We're not micromanaging.
No.
Not
No, I
micromanaging.
just, again, for me, I just want to understand, when we're saying, we're asking about spacing, what that means. That's all. I want clarity in your question.
Well, let me ask this, the city manager, what are you thinking when we're asking the question? These questions are gonna be posed by the consultant, and I'm sure you all have had some discussion with them. What kind of issues are you trying to elicit in those questions?
So we're trying to grab is an understanding as to how, good afternoon, everyone, how spacing is going to be developed from the answer to these questions based on the functionality of what the community needs. So those are gonna be inputs that are going to be part of our core requirements that will then be part of the design much further down. So this is at a 30,000 feet level. How do you envision City Hall serving its purpose for the community? Whether it's constituent to elected official, constituent to government, public servant, or constituent to constituent, like what you're doing here today. That's what we're talking about spacing. So those are, again, just three modes.
But that's in the first survey. We've already asked me in the first survey, why do you go to City Hall? Why do you want to go to City Hall? I think you should go to City Hall, yada, yada, yada. But when we're talking about spacing, it really is not a spacing issue. It's a how do you use whatever the space is.
But you can't determine the space or how much you need until you know what you will use it for, right?
Well, that's the first survey. What are we
Right.
using it for?
Correct. So that's where that output, if you will, from the first survey will serve as an input for the next.
Okay, so this one will facilitate the questions.
For the
We don't know what the next questions are
Yeah.
until we get the answer. to
And
these
I don't know if
questions.
you have in your slides, the topics for each
We will.
visioning
Oh,
session.
yes, we do.
The topics for each visioning session are very focused on determining certain answers that will be that will serve comprehensively for the design later on.
Mhm.
But again, I think we need to understand the use of City Hall. And then from that use, then we can, amplify on space and amplify what kind of amenities it will hold. Whether it's meeting space, office space, or elected official space.
Do you want to try and elicit from the communities issues like workforce? How many people are you gonna, how many people do we have to accommodate? How many people are working from home? How many people are working in the, I mean, people need a sense of, or do they? Maybe I'm wrong on this. Do
We
they
can-
need a sense of how big this needs to be?
We can give you that information from we did an assessment back in 2017, 2018. We have that information, but that's very fluid and that's just a snapshot of time. And things can very much change in the future. So if we do look at, the workforce, I think for that, we should employ a design consultant that will help us envision that, right? But we're looking more at how the public, how you all feel City Hall can be best serve your needs.
Right.
So some of the questions, I have a sneak preview for you today. I was only trying to give you a chunk at a time, but since the conversation is evolving, some of the questions in light of what Greg was saying that we're thinking of asking are questions like, do you need community room spaces for HOA meetings? Do you need small meeting rooms to meet one-on-one with, a small group of neighbors? Multi-purpose space for different types of events or block parties. Those were kind of the questions that we were geared more towards regarding spacing allocation, thinking of, neighbor to neighbor, neighbor to staff, neighbor to, elected official. So we're gonna bring that to you. I wanna kind of take some more time to package that and see how these first couple of workshops go as we get into that topic, but that's kind of the sneak preview of what we as staff and consultant were initially thinking regarding that topic.
Okay, so it's So to me, there's at this end, everybody works from home and nobody goes to city hall except the mayor. And you meet the mayor. All the way to it's at city hall all the time. So, that's a broad sweep there. And so if people are gonna start expressing a preference, they're gonna have some idea of, well, in the modern workforce, in the modern world, are we looking at half the people working in downtown?
So if I may, I have some,
Maybe I'm all wrong on that.
I have some baseline data for you actually regarding that today that we wanted to share in the first workshop as well, that I think will help guide that conversation. So if you don't mind me continuing, I can share that with you, and then we can,
Please go right.
finish. I just have a few more slides and then we can, continue diving in. But there were a couple of pieces of information that you guys specifically asked
Yes.
for in the first workshop, and I think I'm hearing it again now. So we have this map that we wanted to share regarding where all the city facilities are. And I know it's a very big map and the dots are very tiny, but the red dots are city facilities and the green boxes and city parks. But I highlighted just the locations of where some of our more administrative functions are. That might be considered in a city hall. So we have, the existing city hall site was right here. Our transportation and mobility department was just, northeast a block or so. We have our development services department where you can do permitting off Sistrunk. Our CRA and housing and community development is also off Sistrunk. And then the Southside Cultural Arts Center on South Andrews is actually where we have all of our parks administrative offices. Granted, we have several other site-specific facilities like here. But go ahead, I see your question.
James,
Is the land owned by the city where all these buildings sit?
I'm gonna defer to Angela in the back. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Sound and I'm with the city manager's office. Some of these on this list are spaces that we lease, but a majority of these items on this list are city owned.
We own the building that Tam is in, we own that property?
Correct. Yes.
Peter,
I don't think you've got GTL on there, which would be a fine place for a city hall.
No, we know it's right here, so.
you also do a lot of renting spaces for city people.
So our Tower 101, which is just right, it's really the same dot as City Hall because they're so close together on a map this scale. And then 1 East Broward, it's just directly.
Okay, yeah, Michael.
Commissioner Herbst, question for you. Do you feel that we would benefit by having some kind of analysis to see perhaps what our financial input costs are on some of these leased properties and owned properties and maybe use that as data for consideration for maybe where things should be, if there should be, in a more centralized city hall type of scenario?
Absolutely. So I was gonna get to that a little bit down the road, so thank you for anticipating. So, yeah, I'm a CPA, most of you know by trade profession. I'm a pretty frugal guy and I'm being cost conscious while at the same time effectively delivering services is where it comes together for me. That combination of efficiency and effectiveness comes together in what we call economy. And so I'm all about an economical solution, one that drives the best outcomes at the least cost. So, yeah, I think that needs to be a critical part of it. Also, even as we're talking about, do we want community spaces in city hall and things like that? The state legislature, every time they're looking at adopting new legislation, there's a cost benefit analysis that goes with it. So if you ask people, would you like a community room in city hall? Everybody's going to say, yeah. Well, here's how much that's going to cost. That's going to be $3 million. Do you still want it? So, you need to be thinking about that too, because if you ask people open-ended questions, it's like when I asked my daughter, what did you want for Christmas? There's a new car on the list.
The pony.
It's a pony and
Pony.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
I think a financial component of what our spacing is currently is important, as well as, our wish list of what we're asking for. I think we would benefit from having some concept of costs associated with that.
And also, I think with this particular map, I think we need to narrow that down. I think that, we need to narrow it down to the facilities that are important to this conversation. In other words, it's nice to know that we have a PV-Dixie treatment plant, but we're not gonna have community meetings there, okay? So I think it should only be on this list is city facilities that we are using for city hall type functions. So
So that would
space
be-
that we rent for the attorney's offices, things like that. I think you gotta narrow it down a little, because, you know, all that other information is interesting information, but we're only interested in what are we using now for that function, which is the city hall function. That's the universe. Oh, all righty.
We try to
Wait,
anticipate.
wait, Mr. Winslow.
Just-
Mr. Husband.
Commission, I don't know, I'm just talking with meetings.
I'm glad I inspired you today. I like that.
But when are we going to know almost certain what it's gonna cost for City Hall? And I know all the things that we're talking about now is gonna go into costs. But if we don't know whether we paying it $100 or $100 million, it would, some of this stuff that we talking about gonna get eliminated.
But before Greg jumps into it, I'll just give you my, you know, my take on that. And again, I'm not saying anything here that I have not already said in multiple meetings, so I think my position has been very clear. And I'll share it with y'all, just so you understand my thinking on this. I think the workforce is changing. I think the way that we work is changing. I think the way in which cities are adapting to the changing work environment is critical. Article in the Wall Street Journal today about how they're repurposing downtown office towers into residential around the country, and the challenges with that. And that's what you're seeing in most of the large cities, New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. They're taking these office buildings because they're running 30 to 40% vacancy rates, and they're converting them to residential housing, which is very challenging because they have large floor plates and they don't lend themselves to being carved up into apartments. I look at that and I will tell you that I don't know what the workforce looks like 10 years from now, for a variety of reasons. One is work from home. Two is the massive job displacement that we're going to see coming out of artificial intelligence as it gets into the workforce. Folks like myself, accountants, lawyers, are going to be displaced by AI. It's already happening. And so we're going to see a significant change in the city's workforce and our white collar workers in the next 10 years. My preference, honestly, I'd like to rent. And I'll tell you why. I like flexibility. Before we sink $300 to $400 million into an office building that we may not need in 10 years, I prefer to, as we say in the financial field, keep your capital dry, how they're dry. You know, I throw that out just as my preference, but you all are going to come to the conclusions and recommendations that you want to make. But that's sort of where I come from, because I don't know the answer to that question. You know, if we take, if to Marilyn's point, people want to come to commission meetings, and that's what 90% of the people do, then maybe we need a central city hall that looks like the one from Sunrise. You know, it's a smaller footprint that accommodates the city commission, city manager, you know, maybe assistant city managers, and we have off-site locations for my AP, IT, you know, staff, and we put them, as I'm trying to do up here on Cypress, because I'm $30 a square foot gross instead of $60 a square foot, or $150 to build a new building. So I look at it that way. Again, I don't know what the workforce looks like in the next 10 years. And I prefer not to be locked into a solution that, again, reflects the way we've worked for the last 50 years, because I don't think you could extrapolate from how the world has worked for what it's going to look like. We are at a point in time, we're at an inflection point, where I don't think anybody can say with any certainty what cities look like right now.
See,
That's true. We all agree
That's the
on that.
problem, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
When you got the commission and the city manager not certain what city hall gonna look like, that makes our job extremely difficult if we don't know what we are dealing with. We don't know, it really is not gonna matter what the community says until we know how much money we have to get this done with.
Well, you know, money is an interesting thing. You know, yes, everything costs money. But with this discussion, I think we need to put that into a little box and visit it later. Let's find out what we want to do and what people want to do. And, you know, we can never necessarily afford what everybody wants, okay? But we can have to afford what everybody needs. You know what I'm saying? So I think we can't tie our hands too much about the money issue right now. We'll get to the money issue.
I don't wanna tie our hands, but I do want us to be realistic about what we can afford, if it makes sense to y'all. I'm been talking for today, I'm not gonna say.
Oh,
nothing else.
that'll never happen. Go on, Gerald.
I'm with her.
Uh-huh.
Ever since this topic came up, and I appreciate the need for determining the need. But it's shortly after you get past the first survey that, the hell did I elect you for? Or, right, that's, it's 10 times more powerful. And by the way, in the small surveys that I did, that's been the number one answer back to me. How the hell do I know what should be in City Hall? You forgot more about that than I'll ever know. Right? Unless, with the exception of how many people, how many go to the commission meetings? How many would go if it was a bigger room?
And not so cold.
Or more comfortable seats.
Or more comfortable seats.
Well,
Or less comfortable seats.
that knife has an edge on both sides.
Yeah.
So I get stuck when it says amenities. That's your job. Not the public.
Not necessarily.
Well, so I wanna bring up 2 points.
That's why we're a committee.
That's why we're.
There's a couple points, right? So number one, government is made by the people, right? And so we need that feedback because if administration were to come in, we could be very wrong. We would be very far from what the community needs, and then it's just our perspective. It's important to bring that perspective in, even renting. Number two, about financing, right? And about what we can afford. So this is an iterative process. It's really like a rolling wave planning level of process where we're going from unknown like this to narrowing it down to something more defined.
I agree.
And so through time, through these workshops, and then even beyond that, when the commission receives this input, they're the ones that are gonna authorize where we go next based on all this input. But moreover, it's important to note that I've done the project like this before, which is Miami Children's Courthouse, where everyone wanted everything. But then we put all the different, what we call amenities in the construction world. These are just line item things. Well, you want this, that's the price tag. And at that point, we'll need the policymakers to determine, are those things, are those amenities important to keep? And then, like you said, we're gonna go from a want to what's really needed. And that's gonna define our price tag, but that's much later down the road. Now, we're gonna again, cost line item each of these amenities. But we'll also want to look at potential opportunities from the federal government, because this is right next to transit railway. This is TOD, so transit oriented design is basically there's funding available for this. There's funding that can support a project like this in terms of grants or even long-term loans with a small we call it interest rate. So there are those opportunities out there, but we will never know those until we start. And so this is again iterative from rough order of magnitude. Right now, we have a lot of ideas to now capturing the public's input and getting something that meets the needs of those communities.
Somebody should have recorded exactly what you just got finished saying, because I think that's gotta be one of the ground rules, and that everybody should know that headed in.
Right.
It's not once and done. It's.
Okay, yeah, we'll make it a point to.
And I think also, Jerry, part of this has always been in my mind an educational exercise. To get people to think about the city hall and think about their needs and their wants. And because when a decision has to be made, there has to have been a process beforehand where everybody, we know how many people were there, we know what a good city hall looks like, we talked about what we want in the city hall. Because I don't want these guys to get a year down the line and make a decision and all of a sudden everybody says, well, how did you come to that decision? Where did this come from? Why weren't we involved?
Prior process is going, right?
Right,
We didn't want
definitely,
that.
definitely. So we don't want that. We want to be able to give you all as much information, as much participation as possible, so that when you get down to making the hard choices, and they will be hard, people will have at least the feeling that, we talked about this. We heard some information about this. There was a meeting in every place and we went and we talked. Gives you a little comfort and comfort.
Well, and there's one more aspect to that too, if if the final choice is we build a replacement tower downtown at the existing site or somewhere close to it,
Mhm.
you know, that's gonna, when we were looking at the joint government center, our piece of that was $400 million. Construction costs were up 40% in the last couple of years, insurance costs were up 33% the last couple of years, so that number isn't going down. So, you know, if I were just to pluck a number out of thin air, by the time we get around to doing this, it'll be $500 million. So we're gonna have to go out and do a geo bond for that. And so in order to be able to sell that to the community engagement, community education is gonna be key to getting that passed. We got the parks bond passed, we got the police station bond passed. Community education is key, community engagement is key, because that's gonna be a big bite that we're gonna be paying for the next 30+ years on a bond. So
Water treatment.
water treatment plant, exactly.
Right, it took a lot of education on that water
The
treatment.
numbers
plant.
you threw out,
Let's
did
go.
that include the land or just the structure?
I'll let Greg talk to that. When we were looking at the joint government center, I think the county was bringing the land to the table because they were gonna do it at the bus station. So that was not land acquisition. And I think if we're looking at something today, you know, we're starting with land. We start with the dirt we've got. That would be the first place I think anybody would choose to do it. Although there are other options, by the way, above and beyond that. There are other ways of getting this done that don't involve the necessarily doing it at the same site we're on. But, you know, those are alternatives that we, again, take you down the road. You know, I don't want to get too deep into citing it and how we do it, but I think that's just pure construction costs.
Right, but it had never been our intention to pick a site.
Right.
That would not be, we are not doing that. We
No,
are
I agree.
doing principles and what we expect and what we
Exactly.
want, yada, yada, and that's your job to go find a site that matches
Right.
what people
And
want.
there are alternatives to that are not just where City Hall is.
Yeah, but at some point, we're gonna have to deal with that because we're gonna get a lot of people saying site, this site, that site, this site,
Well, a
that
lot of it
site.
depends
We're gonna
on
have to
how
deal
big
with
a
that.
building you're gonna do too. So if you do a sunrise style, small city hall that's permission thing or ceremonial,
Mhm.
if you do a ceremonial city hall,
Like
you can use a much like that. So I'll give you an example, and not that I'm trying to propose this necessarily, I don't want to upset anybody, but we could take the TAM building, right, the parking services building, and that could be a small ceremonial site that's still in downtown. You know, where it wouldn't be a 20-story building, maybe it's a 6-story building, you know, so there are other locations that we could potentially look at downtown. Years ago, I wanted to move City Hall up to Sistron. You know, I was fighting very hard and got no traction with
Lost
it
that
15 years ago to move it up to all the vacant land that the CRA owned up on Sistron. We're trying to do neighborhood revitalization up there. What better than moving City Hall to the Northwest Corridor? I thought it would have been a phenomenal solution. We had so much land up there to do it. We don't have that land up there anymore. We don't have all that vacant space that we used to control under the CRA, so that option's off the table. But there are other ways of looking at things. Land swaps, for example, is an option.
I like the lands.
So, and there are certainly proposals on the table for that.
Oh, Lord, we're gonna be so knee deep into this. It's gonna be amazing. All right.
That's the fun stuff, actually. After we
Yes.
figure out what we're doing, is how to
Right,
do it.
right, exactly.
Just one
Okay.
more nugget of
But this is
information.
an
I wanted to
interesting
share.
map. This is an interesting chart. Can we go back to that?
Okay, I have two interesting things
Yes.
to share.
Let's talk about that.
So this is, you know, the number of staff that we had in City Hall pre-flood, as our baseline. So if you've been to City Hall, they're ordered, you know, top floor to bottom floor, but we had roughly just over 300 employees in that. As we're going forward, you know, that kind of gives you a ballpark.
As
of
opposed
the
to how
numbers.
many employees altogether?
3,000.
3,000, so not 10% of people were downtown.
Yeah, that was in the City Hall building.
Wow, that's interesting.
So that doesn't include development services or our transportation and mobility teams, all of those are in off.
And let me ask you a question, just, you might know the answer to this. No, I'll stop. I'll stop it. Given 310 people in a typical city, office situation, how many square foot a person would you really need for, what is the current standard for the amount of space you need for an office worker? I'm trying to get at an idea of, if we just.
Close down to how large a lower company.
That was a poor question and it's inappropriate at the moment, James.
So I kind of struggled with this slide and I'll tell you why. Finance, what does that mean?
Finance, that would be our utility billing, our accounts payable, our accounting department, treasury, that's that. whole-
Okay, so that's the kind of detail, and I know you have it somewhere. And so we're gonna go back to the accounts payable example, started the meeting. How many people are in accounts payable and do they need to be in City Hall? Tell me about information technology.
We're whittling.
Yeah, so that would be our help desk functions, all of our support staff, application support, those responsible for maintaining our servers.
So does all of IT have to be downtown?
Nope.
So
Actually,
this.
IT needs to be in a very safe, non-flooded area.
Exactly. So I mean, I appreciate you putting this slide together, but it doesn't do enough for me to drive any kind of decision making. And I mean, any
Yeah,
arguments
no,
against
no,
that,
no,
let
no,
me
no.
hear it.
Okay.
Peter?
But surely coming out of the survey, you're going to see an answer. I go to City Hall to deal with finance or something. I suspect you're right, that very few people go there and address one of these directly face to face, one of these 74 people, but we don't know that yet. No, I think you're right in what you said, but we have yet to find out why people are going to City Hall. And the other thing.
But we need to know.
Well, is. I agree with the commissioner. I think I've said as much previously. We don't know the future of work. But the city is a bit different to most other organizations in that we're in the business of public service.
Right.
And the question is, how far do you go towards providing public service, which for most people, when they have a problem, means finding the person that can address it and getting to them directly. And in my experience from years ago, a lot of that involved people walking in and trying to find the person that they thought could address their problem. It wasn't the best use of my time to be available to everybody that came in, but I recognized that my output was keeping people that lived in the city happy and satisfied with the city that they lived in. So you can't lose sight of the public service aspect of being able to speak to somebody face to face and directly.
Right.
You don't have an argument with me about the value of face to face. But I think we have to be future thinking.
I agree with that.
And face to face may not be the future.
Oh, but the face-to-face may not be the most economical or energy efficient future, but that we're people, you know, just because I'm running a business and I can I can drive my profits by having a chat box take care of people instead of a person answering the phone. I'll make more money, but is that really what I want?
But I could call the people at code enforcement and get just as much information and resolution of my problem as going down to their office and talking to them face to face.
Oh, yeah, well, we can differ on that one.
Yeah.
We can differ on
We'll
that.
also find out through the data, right? I mean, whether a lot of people, James, are actually doing that, and whether they're calling it, right? So I think that's also another piece of the data that we'll find out, right?
But we should also somehow be able to capture not only what they're doing now, but if it was available, would they do it? Okay, if you have a problem with your building permit, and you have the choice of getting a chat box on the phone, a chat box on the phone, or a place where you can go like the building services office and take a number 410, and eventually you sit down and you see the inspector right there. There's value in that. I've been in that trap. There's no substitute for looking the inspector in the eye and saying, you got this wrong. What's on your piece of paper here is not the reality. The thing was actually done, because they're just dealing with numbers and computer spreadsheets. You've seen this all the time.
But the AI chatbots are actually taking over now. So AI-driven chatbots are the future of chatbot. They're taking over, and candidly, they do it better because you get the same consistent message out of the chatbot. Whereas you talk to an individual, you get 5 different answers. You talk to
Yeah,
5
but
people.
the data they're working on is consistently wrong. The AI and the chat box perpetuates the existing. At some point, you got to sit down with a human person and say, hey,
Right.
the information you
What
have
you're
is
gonna
not
get
correct.
though is you're gonna get the chatbot first,
Yeah.
And then when you get to a point where it'll resolve 99% of your problems, and then you've got 1% that needs to be escalated above that, and that's where you switch over from the chatbot now to the live person.
But then now you have to have the
You
place
still have
for
to
the
have-
live person to be sitting across the table.
Absolutely. If you don't do away with the human interaction, the
Oh,
question is, down how much, one of the things that we've done, by the way, historically, I can tell you, and we pointed this out in audit after audit, is that our website was never business friendly. Okay?
Mhm.
We never designed our things. We're moving in that direction. We're improving. Okay, but I always tell people, look, I started out in the private sector. I came to government. I spent 25 years now in government. We're 20 years behind the private sector in everything we do. And so, I mean, it's only just recently that we started taking plans online. I mean, it's ridiculous. People used to come in with big bundles of plans to go to the engineering department. It's absurd. You know, we've been doing, you know, we've had AutoCAD for 40 years now. The fact that we're still doing things in paper is absurd. I'm old enough to remember when I kept hearing, oh, we're gonna have paperless offices. All I have is paper now. So it didn't work out that way. But I think as we migrate more to a digital world, I think you're gonna see more problems. I prefer doing business in my pajamas at 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday than going into a business. I can conduct business 24/7. And I like that. And most people are migrating in that direction. So again, when I say we need to be forward looking, you know, don't think about me at 60, you know, think about Mike. You know, what's he gonna be doing? What's my daughter at 20 gonna be doing? Because this is who we're building this for. We're not building it for us. We're building it for that next generation because it's a 50-year solution. That's why I said keep looking forward.
I mean, I just want to add to your point. There's a new model called anything as a service, right? Right. Anything as a service means that anything we need, we can actually service that. There could be specific call centers that are specific for governments that will know our Unicode, that will know our laws, they will know our elected officials, and they will probably give better service than what we have today, because that's all they do, and they will be trained and versed on that. So that is something that is on the horizon. Like the commissioner said, we are late in certain things. We're gonna start January 1st, paperless permits. Just for everything. So that's gonna be the new thing. So that's obviously gonna have less need of people coming in and seeing things, because they're gonna be sharing stuff electronically and digitally. So a lot of variabilities.
No.
But I think that you will always have a need to have a place to meet because of compliance, because of the sunshine laws, and because of how you build government from the very beginning, back to 1776, right? It was always about democracy being formed by people getting together. And so at least that, the core, is something that we would want, again, differentiating the need from the want. And this is what this is gonna target. I mean, and this is, I think we're getting really into conversations that will be done in the future, but this is good because we're taking notes as to how we can guide those conversations so we can get the outcomes we want out of those.
Okay, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes, Fred.
I listen to the commissioner talk. And I think we have to consider that we're not the master builders. I look at the development services and financing. They don't have anything to do with Alan's job, and there's no reason that they can't be in a separate building. And every time you take 100 employees, or I don't know how many are out of building services, a lot, and you take that square footage out of the big building downtown, I think you cut down on your liability of the function of the building changes. So if you're only building a structure for management, I mean, I read in the minutes that Greg says that he's prefer to have everybody in the same building, or at least in the building at work. And I see it up at NASA because I'm pretty well connected with that. They want people up there because it's important. But if you go through and separate the building department, finance department, and I don't know, there's got to be 3 or 4 others. They don't have anything to do with working together.
I know, but you know, we have a comprehensive plan, not a comprehensive, fast forward Fort Lauderdale. And it's all based on silos. And the idea is you don't want everybody in silos. You want the silos to interact. So there's pros and cons on both sides of that thing. I mean, there should be some way for Public Works to collaborate with finance, to collaborate with buildings.
Okay, let's ask Alan, do you have to do that? Or is that an occasional meeting?
No, when we first were out of City Hall, okay, we had to process contracts and things that are signed, wet signed. We could do it one day a week when the procurement staff came in and they had a place to work, and the paperwork sat for 6 days, waiting till they come in so we could hand it over. When I need to train staff, because I have a lot of young employees, I have to wait till the one day a week that they're able to come in now that we have rotating space. There is value to having your entire team together when you're trying to train and mentor. There's value to being right next to procurement, so you can work through the details of contracts and can't do
do it
this
at all.
electronically
No.
when you're working on a 56.6K modem. Okay, when you're talking about AutoCAD and very large files, you gotta have very high broadband to connect with the computer systems that we use and all the security application to go into it. And some people can't do that from home. So what do? They pull everything out and stick it on their kitchen table. And they work on it for 6 hours while their kids or whatever are running around, and then they pack everything away. And then one day a week, they have to pack it all into a suitcase and drive it into the office, set up in their cubicle. They work, and then they pack it all up and they bring it home. So
Right, all this
everybody-
future stuff is not here yet. Okay, maybe, 50 years from now, all this future stuff will be here. And all us old people are not ready for this. Really, we're not. I mean, I think it's good to talk that way and to plan that way, but yes, it's 50 years, but it's also 20 years. In 20 years, we're not gonna be there yet. So we gotta be a little careful with some of this future stuff.
Yeah, I guess my point was that if you divide the people up into separate buildings, you don't have the huge liability of having the work market change to the point where the space that you created today isn't needed for tomorrow.
I see, I hear what you're saying. It's gotta be a balance somewhere. There's gotta be a balance somewhere.
And that
James.
we have been trying to work through that. Finance now has an office where they come in every day and we have that. But it took us a long time to get to that, so that they were in the 1 East Broward building. So we could make sure that paperwork is flowing smoothly.
Okay,
But-
James?
So
Listening to Alan, that's the kind of information that's very helpful.
Mhm.
Clearly, within his department and some of the other departments that he interacts, you want those kinds of people to be together. But you have to look at the whole 300+ people. Do they all have to be in one building? And why isn't transportation here? Maybe, do they need to be here at all? I don't know. I don't know what Ben and his team, they deal with Laura on a regular basis. Who knows? Does Greg want to have all the department directors where he works? That might make sense, because he's got to work with people every day. We just don't know.
Well.
But you have to question what this people need.
Mhm.
And if you don't need anybody in, I don't need to talk to anybody in accounts payable, finance, IT, then I'm not sure they need to be in City Hall. I have a question.
Now you don't have that square footage. That if it changes in 20 years,
Yeah.
it's a pod over there that you can shed.
Michael.
I have a feeling this is also probably the type of conversation that Greg wouldn't want us to take to really evaluate too much. And I guess I would like to lean on Greg and say, where do you feel like, the spacing is going to be utilized best? Because I think this committee, well, we're familiar with how the city works. I don't think that we obviously don't have the level of, yeah, exactly. And the level of specifics that Greg has. And so maybe having a recommendation for how Greg thinks that City Hall would work best for the people as it relates to staff and where they are may help guide our conversation to the end.
Point taken. So I think that for every conversation, we need to have like a preface of, here are the conditions today. This is how we experience things, so we can promote the conversation. But I just want to let you know too, that there's pros and cons of each method. And maybe we should point that when we're talking about, there's pros when we're connected, because the enterprise funds of a lot of these departments chip in to the total cost of the building. So you have better economies of scale when everyone's in one place. As disconnected, you have to now, share janitorial contracts, or not share it, but have disparate janitorial contracts, because they're cleaning at different times and just, and also you have different maintenances, whereas, where you're together, you can share those expenditures. So there is a bearing on the taxpayer at the end of the day, if you're connected or disconnected. I'll tell you that, right now, there's some designs that are focusing on having scalable and flexible spaces, not having concrete hardened spaces that are fully defined for the building. In other words, making sure that these spaces have the flexibility to become maybe an auditorium, then from an auditorium, then back to office space, or back to open space, or back to meeting space. So there's different pros and cons, but I just want to tell you that when we're doing the joint government center, in order to afford that, we were counting on everyone being together, because the BSD, building fund, parking fund, and all the other associated funds would be chipping into that cost. So that's how we were able to afford it.
So I think these conversations will obviously continue as we continue doing the workshops. I know that we have another item on the agenda, so I want to be cognizant of everything else that's on there. But one more thing I just kind of wanted to point out to you is at the last meeting, we heard there were some questions about what does utility billing look like? So we did an analysis back in the spring that we just kind of revived for this group. So looking at 1 month, you can see most of the transactions for at least utility billing people are coming doing online. So I know that was brought up last time, so I just wanted to bring it up today, but that's all we had for you. So if there was.
I have a question on the trends item.
Sure.
Do you know how far back that data goes? Like, when we look at that data month over a 5-year or 10-year period. So it's actually truly a trend and, not a single month data
Right.
point.
We can pull it. I know for the utility billing counter, they had some limited counts that they weren't doing until this time period, but for the kiosks and online payments, we can pull some more specific data.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, just to see what the trend looks
Yeah,
like.
if you're right, it's a point in time, probably more than a trend.
Thank you.
And the utility billing counter, those are always people paying their bill, or just people coming to ask questions?
It's, I believe, mostly paying their bill.
Self setting up new services.
So, and just, the total is up, it's just over 7%.
Yeah.
Versus the online.
Yeah, most of that, this is specific to utility billing.
But again, it's a service. Okay, I mean,
Do away with it. Mary.
no, and I'm just saying, if from a business perspective, if you're running a business, you want to drive everybody online. And you just like my T-Mobile guys, they just gave me an email that says, we are no longer doing paper. Hell with you, we're not doing paper anymore. You have to take it online. Because that's how they make money. But that's not good customer service, because I like to have a paper bill in my hand. And there are some people who can't do it online, who need to take a look at the bill and they need to talk to somebody. So there's the data would tell you all online. That's what the data would tell you. But people are people, and I think we have to keep that human perspective. And hopefully this process will validate that human perspective. I hope.
So
Okay.
with that, we'll implement the changes to the survey that you talked about, and we'll have something prepared for beginning of January and to report back. And if not, our first workshop is on December 2nd.
Okay, so can I ask for my committee members, how many people are planning on, or will, if they can make it, so that we can all be out there in the audience and we can all stand up and people can see faces that we're not some strange group of people, that we're real human beings and waiting for them.
So you're like being the only 2 people in the room, right?
On the second, December 2nd. Yeah.
Right.
We should go. If we can, we should be there with the 7th. All right, hopefully. Yeah. Thank you so much. Good work, guys. Thank you. Good work. All right. Next item on the agenda. It's listed as update on the April 17th flood. And one of the components of that.
Where does it go to 4:30? I have a bar.
No, we have to get out of here. We will be out of here. We've been quick. If there's an item on the agenda coming up at the commission what's the name of that program that we're gonna accelerate all the stormwater?
Fortify law.
Fortify Lauderdale. Okay, everybody familiar with this? Okay, this is a proposal to accelerate all of the stormwater projects from a previous timeframe to a much more accelerated timeframe. Could you go over that a little bit and explain that to us?
Okay, so, we'll be doing a presentation tomorrow that goes into a lot more detail, but it really started with the April 12th flooding event. Where, it was a great example of how we're seeing heavier, more intense rainstorm events. The impacts of climate change are hitting us. And so it caused us to relook what we're doing in our stormwater program and our overall resilience program when it comes to stormwater. So I'm gonna go through some of these slides pretty quick. I think you've seen most of the beginning part on this. Where basically we're dealing with sea level rise, we're dealing with heavier, more intense rainstorm events. And hotter temperatures that are changing the way our environment acts. And so as part of our ability to is first assessing what those vulnerabilities are, and then how we take the steps to deal with them. So I won't go through the pictures from the rain event, but I think everybody has seen these, and 26 inches of rain was much more intense than anything that was anticipated that day. Leading to tremendous impacts through a lot of our cities. So we had 13 neighborhoods that we identified in previous presentations as being very significantly impacted, heavily impacted, with 4 of them being identified as particularly impacted, where we're doing pumps and Vector trucks, and it got into people's houses and caused a lot of private property damage and put people at risk. They weren't the only neighborhoods. Probably every neighborhood in the city had some level of flooding that occurred. And we can go directly back to a lot of these neighborhoods. They have undersized infrastructure or no infrastructure because they were designed 40, 50 years ago to different standards. So we took this as the starting point and took a lot of lessons learned from the flooding event, but also our stormwater master plan. And how do we adapt? How do we change to prepare for the future? And did I go through this slide with you all before, or is this something new?
I think we've seen this one.
I think you have seen this, but very quickly,
Recovery.
it's recognizing it's not just how much rain is coming out of the ground, but the ability to drain neighborhoods also is dependent on how much water is in the canals and the waterways. And it's very dependent on the groundwater. And the groundwater is high. Exfiltration trench in certain parts of the infrastructure just don't work very well anymore. A lot of roads, we don't have control of. The state or the county has control of them. So we don't control all of the pieces that we need to keep our city dry. It's very important that we have pre-positioned contract response capabilities, working with other neighborhoods and working with private vendors. And then we have equipment and vehicles to help to respond to it. We did learn during this, and I think everybody recognizes, a portable pump that's set up, a 10-inch portable pump, can outperform hundreds of Vector trucks to drain a neighborhood. But you have to have a plan to put those in place and know how to use them and have the right authorities to discharge the water where you want it to go. As we're trying to do visualizations of where the impacts were, using GIS platforms, customer service, getting in those response and mapping it allowed us to have real-time visualization so that we could figure out where the areas are that we need to deploy Vector trucks and pumps when we got them. And the last part is down in Edgewood and River Oaks. There were the first 2 neighborhoods in construction with the Tranche 1 Stormwater Master Plan. If we did not have the pipes in the ground to help to drain the neighborhoods, we would not have been able to do it with the pumps that we had. They really helped out, even though it wasn't a complete system. It helped us to drain those neighborhoods much faster than we would have been able to do otherwise.
Was that on spring tide too? The time, were we on the historical, on the high spring tide?
Dr. Gaston might be able to help up with that.
The tides we were experiencing at the time were higher than anticipated, but the storm itself actually occurred during low tide.
Oh.
We were
it occurred over a 5 to 8 hour period, the tide was falling or just starting to come up during that time.
So some of the things that, as we're trying to change our design standards and look how we do it, is first of all, recognizing where the topography has changed. More buildings, denser areas where you have impervious versus pervious areas makes a difference. And where we, over time, we've changed the elevation and how water flows, because water always goes downhill, makes a difference. As we're looking at design standards, do we design for the very high frequency events? That, you know, the 26-inch rainfall that comes once every couple hundred years? Or do we design for lower intensity events that we will see multiple times a year? You know, and that's those 3, 4, 5-inch rainfall events that we might see multiple times during the rainy season. Looking at how any infrastructure is there, how well it works, and where there's deficiencies in it that we need to adjust or accommodate as we're expanding it. In some parts of the city, downtown, Flagler Village, what's the future development needs? If we know that growth is going to be happening, how is that going to change the way that we're managing water in those neighborhoods? Again, looking at climate scenarios and sea level rise in particular is a big thing that we need to accommodate, how it's going to impact us, as well as those changing rainstorms. What I don't have in here, but as we're looking at this new stormwater program that we're putting together, they did an analysis of how much heavier the rainfall events are, how much more frequent they're coming. And they said that we need to increase the amount of rainfall that we manage on a 10-year storm by 17%. Means the chart that we're using were that outdated, or the conditions have changed 17% since they made those type of models that we were using.
Wow.
And then just going down to the bottom, the environmental situation is a lot different now than it was in the 50s and 60s. So we need to accommodate the rules that DEP and others have put in place. We can't design infrastructure to manage everything because we have to comply with environmental rules. And probably the hard part is how much can we afford?
This is a great presentation. I've seen this a couple of times, and it's very educational because when people see this, they start to understand that, you know, this isn't just, you know, nobody showed up to pump my neighborhood and they're mad. This is a bigger problem, and it's gonna only get worse, and we're gonna have to adapt to it. So this acceleration of the stormwater plans, okay? What was the time frame before the mayor decided to accelerate that? How many years were we looking out to get all of the stormwater projects done?
Okay,
All of the
so
neighborhoods.
the first tranche we designed in 2017,
Right,
and we were not planning on the last of those neighborhoods. The original 7, not we had on 8, but out of the original 7, we weren't going to be going up to bid the last neighborhood until 2025. So it would have been completed in 2027. So 10 years for the first $200 million tranche.
oh, well, we've accelerated tremendously on the first 200.
We've only got 2 in construction so far, so
Oh, all right.
yeah, we're still in that timeline. The plan was to do the next $200 million tranche starting in 2025. And again, that was going to be 2025 to 2035 for the next $200 million worth of projects.
And now we're accelerating to do 2 of them in the next 10 years.
Yes,
But how did that, but that doesn't, we shouldn't be finished with the first 200,000 till 2020,
Yeah.
what was the number?
so the first one, it was not going to go out to bid until 2025, so it would have been finished around 2027.
Okay.
So around a
2027.
10-year period to design and construct the first 200 million.
So
And there were some delays there.
to swallow $200 million of work, we were thinking it's a 10-year period, and then there was another 10-year period and another 10-year period.
Right, and it probably would have gotten those faster. Remember, we had a little bit of delay from design while we were going through and changing the water methodology, so we didn't bid them out for, I think we lost about 2
Right.
years.
So, but now we're compressing the last 2 into 1. Is that what we're
Yes.
doing?
Yes, what we're doing is, it's 17 neighborhoods we're proposing. We will start modeling this month. We will have models and conceptual designs completed for 17 neighborhoods in 1 year. At the time, we will prioritize them based on how we assess the vulnerabilities. And we'll go right into design for 4 to 5 neighborhoods at a time. As soon as they finish that, we'll bid out 4 to 5 neighborhoods and go into construction with 4 to 5 neighborhoods at one time. So right now, we're constructing 2 neighborhoods at a time. We'll be constructing 4 to 5 neighborhoods at a time to have all 17 finished in 10 years.
You think this is really possible?
It's very, very aggressive. I think we have the funding aligned using WIFIA loans and short-term loans with the bonds that we already have in place. We have to increase the staffing on the public works side. We have the design contractor already in place with Hazen and Sawyer to do the work for the designs. We're going to be very aggressive on the procurement side, getting them out for bidding and into construction.
That's why he needs the finance guy in his office, so he can get those contracts. Yes. Ralph.
I caught that when you were saying that the exfiltration storm is now becoming ineffective. Obviously, from the groundwater increasing in height, and you don't have that 18 inches or whatever between the exfiltration and percolating down into that. So that's increased your work schedule, I'm sure, enormously, if you're going to be phasing out exfiltration type of systems.
Yeah, as part of the analysis, it's recognizing the groundwater level conditions have changed. The amount of rainfall that we have to manage has changed. And then not being able to use exfiltration is going to drive us towards more pump stations in some areas. And it's definitely going to require a more complex solution. And that's something that the conceptual designs will be working over the next year will be guiding us on that, and then telling us how much it's going to cost for each of those neighborhoods.
Wow. Yeah, Peter.
So this is not really Alan's question, but it's something I'd like to learn more about in a future meeting, which is the cost of all this. I mean, we know that the water treatment plant, what that's doing to the water bills. And now, you know, this 500 million over and above the 200 million, that has to have financial repercussions somewhere. So it's best to just admit that as soon as possible up front. So maybe at a future meeting, we can know more about the financing of the 500 million.
We'll be talking about that specifically at the meeting tomorrow.
The city.
At the conference meeting, we will be presenting, and you can see the slides online for it, but that presentation's got about 30 slides on it. What we're doing is the way the stormwater program was set up was in 2023, we sold $200 million worth of bonds. The next 200 million was set for 2028, and then the next 200 million was set for 2033, every 5 years. Using short-term loans, WIFIA loans, the intent is to pull that money forward and start spending it sooner. So,
But you're pulling it forward at a time of extremely high interest rates. But I guess there's no choice.
yes, but we're not saying that we're going to be doing more, and also we're assuming that in the last few years, we've gotten more than 36 million in grants for our stormwater program. We're assuming that we will be able to get $100 million over that program to offset the cost. So we're really just pulling those 2 tranches of money sooner, and we'll use a short-term financing until we sell the bonds in 2028, 2033. And that's something that we'll be working out with finance, you know, and Laura.
So when is it gonna hit the stormwater bills? No, you can ask me. When are we gonna, when is?
So as part of
First workshop.
as part of this, we are, we're also proposing a lot of other changes on the operational side, dealing with personnel, factor trucks and pumps and other things that we need to do. All that's gonna be rolled into decision packets in the FY25 budget development process. So until we model all that, I can't tell you what the impact will be on stormwater rates.
All right, but everybody gets a stormwater bill in their taxes now.
Right.
Property owners gets a stormwater bill. And we got the hybrid method of determining the split. So we're now gonna go out and we're gonna borrow money, which has to be paid for. Is it paid for by the enterprise funds?
It is 100% the enterprise.
Enterprise funds, okay. So the borrowing and the bonds are all now gonna be an additional amount of money that has to be covered in that assessment. Right? So like in the next year, the next budget, the next year, the next 2 years, are people gonna see a significant increase in that line?
As part of the next year's budget cycle.
Yeah.
We will put all of these factors in there to determine what the rate should be approved in July, September, when they approve the budget in 2025, which will
Okay, so
affect.
it's next year's budget. They won't see it till next year's budget.
Next
Okay,
year's
well, that's
bill.
pretty good.
Because right now we have,
So you did, Santec has done one of these things that they do, these spreadsheets that they do that show the impact every year on the bills.
they have not modeled all
They
this.
haven't, no?
We're just proposing it right now.
Okay,
And nothing has been approved by the commission, so they. When we go into the budget cycle, we propose all these, and then they will do modeling to see what the impacts will be.
right. So you're gonna ask the commission if they agree that we should accelerate all of these projects, and they're gonna say yes. Who's gonna say no? Think anybody's gonna say no? They're gonna walk around in the neighborhoods and say, no, we're not gonna accelerate this. No, they're gonna say yes. So we pretty much assume that you're gonna be getting new Vector trucks, you're gonna be getting, the next,
They will still have to approve all that.
I'm sure individually, but once they tell you to go forward, it's part of the budget. I don't see anybody saying no to acceleration. What's wrong with acceleration? Anything wrong with
Until you put a
acceleration?
price tag on it,
Property tax.
There's a price tag to it.
when you put a price tag on it, then they're
I
gonna
think
say
it's
you didn't
important
tell
to
me that.
recognize, you were asking if we've done revenue sufficiency for the water, the stormwater.
Yes.
And the answer is yes, we've been doing stormwater sufficiency, including, as Colonel Dodd explained, looking at that next tranche and what the rates have to do over time in order to be able to do that. So I think the impact that you'll see in the coming years, some of that was already baked in terms of what we were planning to do in order to make that adjustment for our operating costs, because as we bring Edgewood online, as we bring River Oaks online, we're gonna be bringing on 2 large pump stations that we currently are not operating, we are not currently maintaining, and we're gonna be bringing on a huge portion of infrastructure that's brand new to the system. When Melrose Manors and Riverland Civic get finished being designed, and when those come on, that's gonna increase our responsibilities by about 10% in terms of the length of pipe and the number of catch basins. So the operation and maintenance side has to grow, and in order for us to accelerate the additional project management, we also have to bring in additional engineering staff. And Alan appropriately pointed out, we have to work very closely with procurement because it's going to increase their workload as well.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought when I saw all of this going on is, this is operationally, we're gonna have to, that's like a python swallowing a pig. It's gonna sit there in your belly unless you get enough people to push it through.
The-
We've
the
been
first year-
working on that. We've been adding stormwater staff over the course of the last several years. We've been adding additional infrastructure, and in this year, we have programs to add additional staff. We know that over the course of the next 2 to 5 years, we need 10 more staff and probably $1 million worth of additional equipment. And then we probably also need about $1 million with contracted services.
And what we'll do is at the evening meeting, we will approve a task order for Hazen Sawyer for
I
two
saw
and a
that
half
as well.
million. What that does is it allows us to do modeling, update the standards, and come up with a conceptual design, call it a cost for each of those neighborhoods. And that's all we really have. That's when we start looking at, can we afford to do this? Is it gonna be too much? And that'll be part of that 2025 budget cycle as well. Is at that point, incorporating them into the CIP and figuring out the money flows that we need for those, as well as the operational investments.
Okay, James.
This
And
is
then
all
Peter.
Fort Lauderdale.
That's what a lot of it is.
No
So-
chance for nailing anybody else.
Well, no, the county's gotta have, they've got stuff to do too, that's gonna come on top of the tax bill.
Yes, James.
So, Alan, the money, the request for Hazen Sawyer, is that for the tranche 1 or that will be the tranche 2?
This is tranche two. Tranche two. That's what we're calling it, the 17 neighborhoods to start the modeling and conceptual design.
So, I understand it's coming before city commission tomorrow. I thought I was remember the mayor talking about this in his state of.
You made a big deal about this.
That's what we introduced was.
Right.
It is-
So I will tell you that two people in my neighborhood stopped me as I'm walking my dog and I'm very excited. So I said, we'll see when it happens, but it is accelerating.
I will tell you that since April, my email gets blown up every day with people saying you need to do more, you need to go faster. This is about as fast as we could possibly go, and we may not get 100% of it done in that time. But at least we're trying to lay out a roadmap that we can do. Of course, it's gonna need everybody to support it with the bills.
Yeah.
Because it takes money to
Get it done.
accelerate.
Let's start with
You
Peter.
may know the answer to this, the way they're assessing for storm drainage now, that then the homestead provision doesn't apply to that.
I don't think so. I think it's like a fire fee,
So
like a fire fee.
whatever the increase is gonna be, everybody's gonna be there regardless of whether.
Commercial, residential, everybody. Yes. Who's that?
Madam Chair, you need to adjourn or you need to motion.
Why? 4 o'clock. We're good. What time's it?
Well, I did have two.
Oh,
I had two
never mind.
specific.
Yeah, it's
I
wrong.
had two
No, I'm
very
looking at that
simple
one.
questions.
Right.
I had two very simple questions.
Yeah.
About it. There's a reference here to the Urban Land Institute panel or something. What's that all about?
The ULI panel will be in March. Dr. Gassman can help me with this one, but what they want, it's a national panel that's gonna come to talk specifically through policy challenges and recommendations dealing with low-lying roads that get inundated from king tides and flooding.
So this is one of these things where these people come into town for a weekend or something and assess the issues and prepare. This is the thoughts of the Urban Land Institute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Will that be open to the public?
Oh, it's gonna have a lot of public involvement with it. And I think we're looking at about a 4-day period for it. It's gonna be a very, very involved process.
And then you have down here in the future, improved resilience standards. So what's that for? What does that mean? I think. Well, it's on the slide that you haven't yet got to.
Which slide?
Okay, on the bottom.
Okay, specifically on that one is how we.
It's 45 Lauderdale, improved resilience standards.
Okay, so right now, the city said is designed to a 10-year level of service, a 10-year flood event, which is about 8.5 inches of rain over a 24-hour period. We have reassessed that, and we're saying that 10-year storm event is really about 10 inches of rain. So that means that we're gonna be, everything we're designing is gonna be for a little bit greater capacity. And also the ability to manage those microbursts.
So does that apply to developments as well?
That would be my question.
Well, for right now, we are doing the public right of way. That will be part of the discussion as we're going to, part of this also is. We will be looking at standards for private properties and recommendations to make properties more resilient. And ways to help private property owners to either get grant money or access funding to improve their properties. So we're not gonna pay for it directly, but we're gonna create the program in this first part to help people to recognize their vulnerabilities and ways that they can improve their properties.
But at some point, we will have to focus on the standards for developments. Which right now, they only have to do a 3 inches in 24 hours capacity. That's crazy. That's cray.
Right, and again, this may tell us what those recommendations will be that we take to the commission and change our ordinances.
But I also think it's important to recognize that Broward County is actively changing the standards for future groundwater table and related types of maps. They've got priority planning area activity, which is telling if you want to develop in this location, we've determined that it's going to be substantially threatened by sea level rise. What are you going to do in order to address resiliency in your building? And if you don't meet whatever their judgment is at the time, they will not allow you to change your land use in order to build whatever you're asking to build. So the resiliency standards, we have our own opportunities within our code, but Broward County is pushing very hard to substantially change.
So does that only kick in when you plan?
Yeah, no, when you
No,
go
that's-
complex.
The priority planning area piece comes in if you want to change your land use. But if you want to develop, you have to now develop based on the future groundwater table map, which they've had for a long time. It's just that more recently they've incorporated the long-term sea level rise impacts and looked at how sea level is going to impact groundwater table. And for Fort Lauderdale, that has significant impacts in terms of your ability to not only build, but how you will manage your stormwater impacts on your site going forward. So it's not just what the city does, it's also what other agencies are doing in this space.
And we should have a presentation on that. What's the name of Dr. Gerardo? Gave us a brief presentation on that at one of my other meetings, and she'd be perfectly happy to come and talk to us. She'll talk to anybody about the work that the county is doing in terms of recognizing the changing nature of what we're having to deal with. So at some point we'll do that. Okay, thank you very much. All right, thank you, Ellen.
No, thank you.
That concludes our agenda. The information about the financial reports and the water and sewer breaks is in your packet. I didn't notice anything that we needed to be particularly concerned with. Is there anything that anybody wants to bring up, committee members, something we need to cover that we haven't been covering?
No, just point out that we didn't cover the agenda. We can do that next.
Yeah, you can look at that. You can look at the information. The information's there. They always put stuff into the intercoastal waterway. when
I
there's-
could point to that.
Yes, okay, yes, James.
So
Before we adjourn.
I got an email from a friend who's also the president of the Sheriff Civic Association. And he wanted to come talk today, and I said, well, it's open to the public, very welcome to comment. And he was wanting to talk about the location of the new city. They said, well, you can come and talk, but we're really not talking. We're really not.
Well, you know what? We are not gonna pick a location. We're gonna be in this process, and in the process, there will be many suggestions and questions and this place, that place. And, we're taking in that information. We're making a forum available for people to express that. But I think we all pretty much agreed when we started this, that our job is not to pick a location. Our job is to be a forum where people can talk, share ideas. Commission can listen to all of the ideas, and that's our function here. Our function is like the forum for the discussion of this.
If I may,
We should have a forum too.
I think the intent is, the city wants to give the public an opportunity to give their 2 cents. And then when they get all the information, they're going to make a decision and say, well, we took everything that we got from there and considered it. And that's just gonna, take some of the heat off of the public coming back to them and criticizing them for not getting it right.
That they didn't have an opportunity to be heard.
Well, no,
That's the best we can do.
That's fair.
I've got enough. Now that it's in plan form.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
before.
Yes.
But just to let you know, because of the inflation, we're going to 2 cents to nickel.
That much.
That much.
I watched.
I thought it was worse than that.
Yeah, we gotta- I get up. This is mine.
Okay, thank you guys.
That's my first one.
Everyone. Thank you.
My question, we're going on.